Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'm Linda. Good morning, Inez. Hi, Jane. Good morning, everyone. How are you all? It's been a little bit of a ride lately, hasn't it? I'd show you my office right now. It is a disaster. There's chairs flipped over, moving boxes. There's a mattress right over there. um, so, Jane, you did it. Thanks. Morning, Michelle. Welcome. Glad to have you here. So I know we had one question from the Facebook group. Jane, I have it here in the chat and I can paste it through so everyone can see it. If you think you'd still like to chat about that today, maybe let me know and I can put it out there. Of course, now I've covered your answer with my text. Okay, great. Okay, so let me paste this in right now. And then if anyone else, as usual, has any burning questions, go ahead and paste them into the chat. Melinda, I'd like to talk about disappointment today too, if we have time. Okay, great. We can definitely do that. Okay, awesome. Anybody else have any burning questions? And you can bring them through energetically too. You don't have to type them if you don't want to. Okay, great. All right, so I'll bring the chorus through. We'll see what they have to say, and then we'll take it from there. All right. Beloved ones, there is much that you are becoming conscious of. We are delighted to be with you, as always. And we are more delighted each and every time because each and every time you are coming to clearer and clearer understandings of much that you have created and experienced here. And in so doing, you become more fully aware of your own perspectives, your own existences, your own consciousnesses, which are each vastly unique, incredibly special, and required for creation to be complete. Therefore, it is a delight to us to rendezvous here with you in this perspective, because each time we find that you are demonstrating or sharing more of yourselves too. Your questions, the things you are coming to understand, the things you are coming to recognize and perhaps are not so much preferring, are all part of this awakening, are all part of the idea that there could be something else that you do prefer. And in so doing, it is the first step in moving in that direction. There is much that humanity slowed down or separated. You created a distance between the things that you desired, the things that you believed could be possible, and the recognition of those things by your five senses perceptions. This disconnection you know well. And in fact, in recent times, there has been much emphasis on the idea of how to manifest consciously. You have come to new understandings of the effect that your beliefs, that your thinking has on your days, has on your emotions. There is a connection between these things that is more apparent to you now than it had been in the past. We would like to suggest, dear ones, that this is but a scratch on the surface. There is so much more going on in this dynamic between your belief systems, between your reality, between humanity, and between other civilizations. Therefore, if you find at times that you are not quite satisfied with the way that you want to consciously create and are not yet, that is a true sensation. That is a true perception that there is much, much more going on here than meets the eye, and that by awakening to all of these facets, to all of these dynamic interactions, you are coming into more and more of a conscious control, you could say, of choice, of freedom. Therefore, be easy on yourselves when you recognize that you are, yet again, perhaps not as positive as you wish you were, or perhaps not as manifesting of the things you want as you wish you were. For this is part of this great awakening. The dissatisfaction is often what highlights for you in your conscious perceptions the importance of those desires. And in so doing, you awaken to those directions and to those possibilities. And in so doing, eventually, those things that you desire will be met. Time is becoming less and less of a construct that defines your existence. You all are softening in your experience of linear time. Perhaps you all have begun to notice this already. Days and hours and minutes mean much less to you once you have had experiences of powerful manifestations in short periods of time or powerful manifestations in long periods of time. You find that the meaning of time changes. It is not so much what dictates what is possible any longer, for you have examples, many examples, of things being possible or not possible in the same periods of time that otherwise you might not have considered to be so. Therefore, as you continue to expand into this looser definition of time, you will find that you accelerate through many desires. And dear ones, should you try and write them all down and tabulate whether or not you are achieving them, you may find that a difficult exercise for mind to do. For mind is still a reflection of your beliefs of limitation, and therefore it is not presently constructed to consider more of the infinite. This will be an energetic exercise first. And as you expand energetically into the feeling of more of the directions of all of these different desires, then you will find that mind is able to come up with the concepts, the explanations, and the words to describe and explain all the things you have already known, felt, and experienced. We love you so much. What questions can we answer for you today? This is Katie. So we can start with Jane's question. Perhaps we'll start there, and then Melinda will move into yours. And if anyone has any questions based on what the Course has just said or is about to say, go ahead and pop them into the chat, and we can just keep moving through them as we have time for today. Okay, so starting with Jane's question. Does our BSC have a quote-unquote mind of its own, or is it really the collective? I ask because I had a notion that the whole BSC is pushing back at the moment. You talk about beliefs getting activated when there is expansion, and boy, does it feel like a big one of this moment's right now. Are there parts of the whole architecture that just don't want to change? Very interesting question. Let's see what the Course has to say, and then I can share my understanding as I have it too. Let us talk for a few moments about your belief system complex, this entire dynamic, evolving organism, you could say. We use that term because organism, to your conscious perspective, to your group consensus right now, means something that is living and something that can change. In this way, this word fits because by the energetic resonance of each game player here, they are actively creating the belief system complex. Each game player is energetically connected to the source of all life. How could they not be? And therefore, their resonance on these frequencies is an active thing. They are constantly doing it. You are constantly doing it. Therefore, beliefs are constantly being generated. This, in some ways, was required because you are also, by virtue of being connected to the source of all life, constantly expanding. Therefore, you had to create a system that constantly rebuffed or disallowed your perception of the infinite. Therefore, as new energy comes in through you, you mold it into the creation of disallowance. But you are always expanding, even when you are giving yourselves the experience of not perceiving that expansion. Therefore, are your belief systems constantly being constructed? Yes, they are, by every game player who is participating and will participate on these wavelengths. Therefore, is it possible that as there are some game players who are starting to allow themselves to see more of that infinite, that there may be a balancing effect in the belief system to protect, we will say, the experience of limitation that others are still having? Remember, dear ones, you all came here by choice. And you all came here to experience this one in an infinite universe type of opportunity, to have the experience of disallowing your infinite perceptions. So in a way, you could see how from your perception, as you are beginning to experience more of the infinite, you recognize in other places in the game areas where others are actively turning away from that opportunity, from that perception. And this is true because it is not yet relevant to them to see those opportunities in the way that it is relevant for others who are ready to turn towards that light. Now, this we will say, and we will say most specifically, readiness for awakening can happen at any speed and in any instant. You may find those around you who seem very, very, very not ready to awaken. And you may be surprised to find that in a day's time, they turn around and fully embrace the light of the infinite. Time does not work in a linear fashion here. Awakening is many curving roads and sudden movements, we would say, from your perspective. But energetically, you will begin to sense another's readiness for awakening long before there is a five senses representation to reflect that choice. From the five senses perspective, it may look like a sudden 180-degree turn towards awakening, and this is true. We will not argue with that perspective. But from an energetic perspective, you will have felt this about those around you whom you love for quite some time. Miss Katie. Jane, did that answer your question? I can elaborate on that too, if it helps. And actually, wait, I will say something. So, speaking as an individual, so they just covered the collective. Jane says that is fascinating. I'd love to hear your elaborations. Great. Okay. So they're talking about the collective, the whole architecture. So the whole architecture, they're saying, is organic. It's a living thing because we are living. So you could think of us as the individual cells of the construct. Okay. And so we are living and doing things and reproducing and each making choices that sort of add up to this belief system complex. And so, yes, at the meta level, there is a pocket of cells, or maybe pockets, however you want to think of it, that are starting to awaken. And so those individuals around them will sometimes create a new belief to sort of balance that if they're not ready to awaken. So they will come up with reasons or even manifestations as to why to not believe in that is a direct example, but an indirect example is to get distracted. I see that more often than not. So it's actually like chaos erupts over here, sort of in a limiting way, and they just so like a miracle is right here, and then something comes up that just magnetizes the attraction of everyone else who's not ready to see it away from that. It's very fascinating to watch once you start to see it in more places. Okay, so that's an example of it happening at the meta level. Oh, it sure does. Yeah. So, but at the individual level, I would say that I experienced this in several ways, but one of which I always called the kickback. So, I would have an expansive conversation with the chorus, and I would be like, "It all makes sense. This is so great." I'm sort of like, "Oh, I'm allowing. It's so awesome." And then after I channeled them and I sort of came back into my five senses belief systems, there was a visceral like kickback, is what it felt like from my beliefs. Like a real challenge of like, oh yeah, then how do they explain this? Oh yeah, well they're suffering over here. That's not okay. And so there was almost like this, ugh, like, yeah, Melinda, the kickback. Yes. So it's like I fired a shot off into the infinite and it felt amazing. And I really had these moments of clarity. And then you come back into the five senses and it's just like, now nothing makes sense, or now I can't believe that. It almost feels worse for a period of time. And this reintegration process is the contrast between your conscious recognition of the contrast between that different frequency that you were just on and the five senses. When all we are aware of is the five senses, it doesn't feel as bad as when we are then consciously aware of something different, more expansive, more amazing. And then we come back here and we're like, holy shit, this really does suck. This is really hard, or this is really limited, or this is really painful. Basically, what we're saying is this is very, very different than these other energetic places that I now know exist. Now, the judgment that we apply, even subconsciously, right? It sort of comes up out of us of like, this is really hard here. Okay. That actually are the beliefs of limitation. So it's not necessarily that like the five senses is fundamentally worse. It's that there is a very rapid subconscious action that is sensing our preference, which is this way. And then we recognize that it's not here, which is the start of the five senses limitation. This ain't it. This ain't it. This sucks. I don't even know how to get back over there, right? All of that comes up subconsciously as we come back into the five senses. And so, what we're actually awakening to in those processes are those beliefs. that cause us to recognize when something's missing, feel like we don't have control of it, not sure what to do about it, judging something that we don't prefer, which energizes it, which is basically one of the fundamental structures of what we did here. Our need to focus on the stuff that we don't want was one of the number one ways that we energize the recreation of limitation, the antithesis of the infinite. So it happens at the meta level and it happens at the individual level where there's a miracle right here. And instead, the group consensus will be like, but this is broken. Would you look at this? This is so broken. And the miracle's right here. And then we walk through that at the individual level where we have these expansive moments and we come back. And there's just this focus of like, oh, this feels awful. The miracle and the other frequencies are still right there. But we are awakening by oscillating to the beliefs that held us in a focused place in this game. And so sometimes from our five senses perspective, that feels like a kickback. It feels like a penalty for having exited the game and come back again. I'd be like, why am I in the penalty box again? This sucks. And that is a true perspective that is real from the five senses. And then there is the other energetic perspective that says, by way of walking through that experience, we are seeing the beliefs that caused us to focus on and create this experience. Jane says, so as we oscillate back and forth, does it get easier to feel less shitty? Yes, it does. Because you are rewriting alternates, or you're writing other ways of allowing those beliefs to exist. The friction comes from our five senses need for singularity. We need to know the one way or the better way. It's subconscious. We embody it. It's just how we look at things. So when we come back to the five senses, there is an argument to decide or evaluate or pick one or focus. There is a difficulty with the oscillation itself. And that's just in us because that's part of how we kept the borders around this singular reality. So really what we're doing is giving ourselves permission to oscillate, for there to be more than one truth, for there to be more than one reality or way of looking at things. And so the oscillation itself becomes easier, and then it becomes faster. And then it becomes so fast that it's as though your consciousness has expanded to take in two realities or more at once, which is, by the Chorus's definition, awakening. It is expansion from a point of limitation. Remember, not ejecting off of it, not like, it is expansion from, meaning we are learning to take in more at the same time, birthed from a place of limitation. So it does get easier. When I first started channeling the Chorus, it was so, Jane says, thank God. I know, right? Oh, I've been there. When I first started channeling the Chorus, when I was able to finally really reach them and come back down again, I was, and this will make sense now, so depressed, so immobilized by depression for at least the next 12 to 24 hours. And we know now that depression, right, is the sense of something greater or bigger and expanded frequency, the recognition that it's not here yet. And then the five senses belief system sort of just goes like I can't, how do I get there? I don't even know. It just feels like an overwhelming sense of loss. Like I am lost. I don't know what to do. They call it an energetic eddy, where you sort of get stuck in this churning position of like, you're so numbed. I have no idea how to get this five senses shit over to that place. Like the gap is too big. It's like massive overwhelmment. Okay. But as we've also talked about, a lot happens in depression. So, when in the human body, we have like an invader or something, and cells will sort of pocket it off, right? We'll sort of like capture it and we'll keep it contained until the immune system knows what to do about it. That's kind of what happens when we go out and have a really expansive experience, like super crazy expansive, like seeing divine light, right? And I would come back. The belief systems, in a way, immobilized me so that I had time to integrate how this could be possible from within our limited reality without violating the rules of the game. I had to create, by my way of existing here, a valid alternative, how this could be possible while suffering, while limitation, while these other things could also still be possible. And so while I was sort of immobilized, I couldn't like run out into the street and perform miracles or something like that, right? Because that would have fucked up the whole experience of limitation. I would have been in violation of the rules of the game. And said another way, nobody would have been able to perceive me. So I, as the individual, though, experienced sort of a compression, like an immobilization from being able to do much in my reality. But inside of me energetically, simply by existing here, I was continuing to write understandings, beliefs, things that helped it to be true and possible, while also honoring, allowing for the game and everything that we'd already built, which by the Course's definition is transcendence. Allowance, when we are able to allow something to be, we transcend it. And that just doesn't mean like, I don't get it, but I'm going to allow this. No, it means like full integration, like full beliefs. That sense of conviction is full integration. So by the time I came out of these cycles, I had built a conviction, a certainty of like, oh, I get this. And then it all eased out again. And then the depression dissipated. And then I was able to start moving again. And then eventually I'd come up with more questions. And then I'd go back to the Course and the whole fucking cycle would start all over again. But did it get faster? Yes. Now to the point where I will feel a compression. I will feel depression. And it sometimes may last a matter of minutes. Now, and also now my perception of depression is very different. I don't struggle against it in the way that I used to because I've built beliefs about its purpose, which also makes the experiences of these things much easier. Jane, it feels like this leads into Melinda's question about disappointments. Good point. So, Melinda, thank you, Jane. Melinda, do you want to come up on stage and interact with them? Well, I felt that too, Jane. Do you want to come up and interact with them and us? Or do you want to, we could just roll with the topic, or if there's something more specific about disappointment, we'd be happy to talk about that too. Sure, I can join. Great. Okay. Let me come in here. Okay. The invite should be on its way over.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you.
It's good to be here.
All right. So, do you want me to bring them through and then you ask your question, or do you want to ask it now? And we'll bring them up.
It doesn't really matter if you want to be a part of the question. We can do the question first and bring them in.
Okay, sure. Go for it.
I don't even really have a question. It's just kind of like the past 2 days I've had an awareness of disappointment that has felt different. I've been almost like poking at it. Like, what is this thing that's like showing up? And then watching as like a lot of my fears, especially around new adventures or new experiences, they all lead back to either being afraid of being disappointed, afraid of being disappointing other people, afraid of disappointing myself. Like everything seems to be right now leading back to disappointment.
Amazing. Awesome. Okay. I mean, and not awesome. You know what I mean?
Totally know what you mean.
That's amazing. Okay. All right. Let me bring them through and we'll start there and see what they have to say.
Thank you.
Beloved one, so much you are coming to understand by way of this concept called disappointment. Here we will say at the start that words are insufficient for what you all are starting to experience energetically. For remember that the reflection of energy comes out as five senses manifestation. Therefore, you all are experiencing much, much more than words have manifested to reflect yet. Thus, give yourselves permission to know that you are experiencing energetically many different things at once. You are moving through many different beliefs at once. And therefore, as you continue simply in your observation of them, those concepts and those words will come through to you. You are moving outward in many directions. And therefore, as you follow each of these lines, however you would like to call it, more understandings will come through to you that will explain. So, remain open to the idea that much of what you are experiencing is connected and may also be all leading you in different directions that will be felt energetically and that will be embraced, will be understood, will be connected in the ways even that mind enjoys at some point in your time. All right. Therefore, what is this sense of disappointment? Disappointment is the human perception of an energy that is divisive, we will say, within you. When things are starting to come together in a way that you sense, there are beliefs that you have of limitation that will sort of hold those things apart. Perhaps you have felt this. When you start to see things coming together and it's all working out, and perhaps you have a mental projection of how it will work out, and then there's a pause. It doesn't quite connect. It doesn't quite click. It didn't come together in the way that you thought that it would. And there is a sense of disappointment. Humans will also say this word, disappointment, when anything does not show up that they thought would. But we think that you and we know that that is not always the same sensation. Sometimes you have a plan for something and it doesn't happen and you feel anger. Sometimes you have a plan for something and it doesn't happen and you feel relief. So disappointment is not simply about when something that you thought you wanted didn't show up. It is that this sense of things coming together and it's going to connect and work out doesn't click and doesn't connect. That sense of a loose end, of a missed connection, perhaps we will say, is what you all consider often this sense of disappointment. Why did I miss that connection? Okay, now, from a five senses perspective, what is required to have the perception of a missed connection is the idea of how it would occur. We have spoken much about mental projections, and oftentimes it is an abstraction from the present moment. You get a sense of something wonderful, of a connection, of something working out, coming together, and then your mind goes, whoop, pulls you right out of the present moment into the thinking about what it could be. Yes? No one is to blame for this, well, except all of you, because it is the subconscious action of your belief system complex. Because were you to continue in the present moment of that sensation, the connection would happen right then. It is a present moment perception. As you are feeling that excitement for something to be connected, you are in the present moment. You are in an energetic presence. And as you very seamlessly go right up into your mind and thinking about how it will be, yes, then you are pulled out of the present moment, which was completely your objective in being here. Okay, so what happens after you've been thinking all day long, all night long of this thing that you are so excited to have, and at some point you come back down into the present moment? And something inside of you starts to say, well, where's that? Well, I don't see it yet. Well, it's not here. And you have a perception that that moment has passed. How could that be? Where did I go wrong? Perhaps I should have changed my plan. Perhaps I should have done this. And then you go, whoop, right back up into the mental perception. So there is a balance forming here between the reasons that you are constructing to stay in the present moment and the need of the belief systems to abstract you from it. As you continue to work with this sense of disappointment, meaning as you simply continue to observe it and remain conscious of it, you are writing beliefs about alternate ways of dealing with disappointment. Yes, you are saying, well, maybe I shouldn't be afraid of it the way that I have been. Maybe I shouldn't factor it into my decisions the way I had done. Maybe I don't have to be afraid of those things. Maybe I don't have to wonder about those things. And in so doing, you are giving yourself ample cause to remain present. Maybe I could just show up. Maybe I don't have to think about that right now. And in so doing, you stay in what was coming through and what was starting to manifest in that present moment. Yes? Does this help?
That was very helpful. Yes, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. I don't have anything to add.
That was good. That was good. I needed to hear that.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anybody else have any questions? For me or for them or for anybody? For anybody. Who else are we going to bring through? I don't know. So I will say on a side note, while anyone else is thinking about any questions they have before we can sign off for the morning, I remember that I believe Jane and Inez said that the podcast episode about the memories of our destruction, you really felt that. We are continuing that story in this Friday's podcast, I believe. So I just wanted to give you guys a heads up for that. Linda says, yay. Yeah. Yeah. Some of these threads, the chorus sort of times it, I guess we both do, but they take breaks, right? There's different topics that they're moving through. And so I've actually appreciated that because I think it gives us time to integrate that one. And then they sort of move over here and then we integrate this one. And then we come back. So Inez says, awesome. Yes. Thank you. Great. All right. Any other questions for this morning? then you guys can come over and we can all pack my kitchen. Just kidding. A lot to integrate, Jane says. Yeah, no kidding. They can really pack it into a handful of minutes, can't they? Yeah, it's pretty great. All right. Well, thank you all so much for being here. I will post the date of the next event in the Facebook group and on the Instagram, trying to be more clear with the communication. So hopefully that'll help. Jane says many thanks. Melinda, thank you so much. Thank you both so much. So we'll probably be back in another couple weeks. I would say 2 weeks. And it says, thank you all so much. So helpful. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. All right. We love you all and we'll see you soon. Bye. Good luck with the move. Thank you. Bye.